Welcome to Improve Your English Writing, video number 72, which is part 2 of a two-part series on doing source citation in MLA format. And this video is going to cover basically the works cited section, and we're going to discuss the 4 parts of writing a works cited entry, and we'll also discuss formatting the works cited section. So if you'd like to get notifications for this series, please click subscribe. If you like the video or you think others will find it useful, please click like and check out links to videos and books in the description, like a link to the companion volume here. So this video is going to cover writing entries for only the 4 most common types of sources. There's different types of sources, but I'm going to cover the 4 most common sources, which are books, journals, journal articles, magazine articles, and web pages. So the book also covers doing a works cited entry for a book chapter, a lecture, a presentation, and different audiovisual sources like films, DVDs, albums, and so on. So, and there are 4 things needed to create a works cited entry. You always need the author's name, the work title, and the publication date, and then the publication details. And these items, all these various elements or items, we'll just call them elements. These elements are separated with either a period or a comma. See this, if they use a period or comma, we're going to see that in the examples. And the necessary publication details, so I always want to say these 3, you always need author's name, work title, and publication date, but the publication details depend on the source type. So therefore, record all publication details that apply for the source type. Not all of them are going to apply for every source type, but here are the various things to consider for each source type. And I'm talking a book, a journal article, a magazine article, or a website. So we're going to do website first just because it fits on this slide. So for a web page, I'm just going to repeat this just to make sure that no one confuses or accidentally leaves out always doing the first 3 here. So I'm just going to put those in parentheses. You always need the author's name, the work title, and the publication date. And along with that, these are now all these bullet items are the publication details, and that's the website name, the URL, and the access date. Even if you have a publication date, write down the date that they accessed it. So now let's go on to the publication details for a book. Remember, you always need an author's name, work title, and publication date, but the specific publication details for a book, which may apply. Remember, not all of them apply, so always record all these or think about all these when you're doing a book source. There could be a publisher, there could be a city of publication. This is usually only for pre-1900 books. An editor, a translator, an edition number, a volume number, a repository location. That's basically a repository location. It's only needed for a limited access item, like it's a rare book. It's only found in a certain library. You would want to record, what library it was, the call number, the box number, whatever it is. Remember, not all these apply to every source, but these are things to think about when doing a source site or works cited entry for a book. And then you want to, if it has a DOI or URL, and of course the website name for the URL. It's usually included in the URL. If not, record it. So now let's move on to a journal or magazine. Once again, you always record the author's name, the work title, the publication date, and then the various publication details for a journal or magazine. They're basically the same. Are the journal or magazine name, the volume number, the issue number, the page numbers, the repository location, if it's a limited access item, and the DOI or URL, and the website name if necessary. So good. So let's now move on to certain things for writing the works cited entry for a book, journal journal article, magazine article, or web page. And then there's certain things which can occur with all four of those sources. So I'm going to cover these specific things first that can apply to each of the four types of sources that I'm going to discuss. So what do you do when you have two authors? Well, the first author is written last name first, but the second author is written first name first. So an example would be, if you had two authors, would be, so here's the first author, Smith, comma, John. Then you put a comma, and then you write the second author, which is written first name first. So Smith, comma, John, and Robert Jones. And what do you do when you have a work with three or more authors? Well, you use the first author plus et al. So an example would be, if we had, so here's the first author, Smith Jones, comma, et al. That's what you do for a work with three or more authors. And the publication date, how do you format the publication date, which we'll get to? Well, you use a day, month, year format with abbreviated months using a period. So if you actually go back to the video on abbreviation of dates, you'd find out that when you abbreviate a month, you actually don't put a period, but the MLA actually uses a period with the abbreviation of a month. And then the other thing is, remember, in the United States, people will write month, day, year, but you want to write it in a day, month, year format. Maybe I should have made this bold. So put the day first, don't put the day second. So some examples. Example would be December. Here you don't have a day, but this could be like a magazine article, because they don't come out on certain days. They just have a month and a year. So here it'd be December 2020. You abbreviate December with the 3-letter abbreviation and a period. And then here's a date. So you put the day first, then the month, then the year, and you abbreviate the month, and use a period with the abbreviation. So that's how you would record the publication date for that. Of course, if you're doing a book and it's just a year, you just write the year, like 2020. Now we're going to cover, book, magazine articles, and websites. So let's discuss how you write a works cited entry for a book in MLA format. Well, first comes the author's name, last name first. Then you do the work title in italics and capitalized per rule 64. If you're not sure what those rules are, go watch that video 64. And then you put other information. I'm calling other information. This is where you'd put, if you had an editor or translator, or if it was an addition, it would come next. If that information was applicable. So, and then some notes. So you would put edited by or translated by for an editor or translator. And for an edition, use ed period for edition, and vol period for volume if applicable. This editor and translator is also if applicable. Then you put the publisher. Then you put the publication year. And then you write the DOI or URL, includes site name with a URL. So, and then the HTTP colon / or this can or may be omitted. You can write it, but it may be omitted. That way, everything just sort of starts with www. So here is a source citation, or this is a works cited entry for a book. So you have author's name, last name first, then you have the title in italics and capitalized per rule 64, and this book just happened to be the second edition, volume 4. So that's how we did it, ED and VOL. That's how you do this. If it had translated by, you'd have it, it would occur right in this area. Then you put the publisher. Notice I should have noted that after the author's name is period, after the book title is period, then you have this other information, comma, then you have the publisher, comma, then you have the publication year, period, and then you list the this is a DOI. Since it's a DOI, there is no website name, so it's just straight up. But if you didn't have that, it would be you'd include the website name first, and then comma the URL. So let's look at a journal or magazine. So first you list the author's name. Not going to repeat all this with the same type of information as the book. Then you do the work title in quotation marks. Then you have the journal magazine name in italics. Then you have the volume number preceded by VOL. Then you have the issue number preceded by NO, period. Then you have the publication date. And then you're going to have pages preceded by PP. Then you're going to have the DOI or URL. Include the website name if it's a URL. So here's an example. Oh, sorry. And of course, you may omit the HTTP at the beginning. So here's an example of a journal article in MLA format. So here you have the last name first. You have the article title enclosed in quotation marks. Notice that there's a period. Sorry, I skipped it again. Period after the author's name. There's a period after the title. Notice how it's actually the periods inside the quotation marks. Then you have the journal name in italics, comma. Now comes the volume. So here you have volume 5, comma, number 2, which is the issue number, comma. Then they have the publication date of March 2005, because journals and magazines are usually just published on a monthly format, or this could be fall 2005, then you write fall 2005. Some journals only publish 4 times a year, and they may have like spring, winter, fall, summer. So it could be like spring 2005, comma. And then you have the page number range here, PP. And then here you have a comma, and now you have a URL, and it's preceded by the website name. So Grammarly Quarterly, and then you have the URL listed here. So that is what a Works Cited Entry looks like for a journal or magazine. Let's move on to a website. So for website, once again, you have the author's name, last name first, the work title enclosed in quotation marks, capitalized per Rule 64, the website name in italics, the publication date or the access date, the DOI or URL, and you can omit the HTTP. I guess it's a website, you won't have a DOI, you should have a URL, and you can omit the HTTP. So if you actually do have a publication date, so it's formatted differently than if you just, if there is no publication date and you have an access date. So let's cover that first. So publication date. So here it is. It's, author name, last name first, period. And then it's the title of the, or name of the web page in quotation marks, period, inside the quotation marks. Then you have the website name. Then you have in italics. Then you have comma. Then you have the publication date. Remember, it's formatted day, month, year, and you abbreviate the month with, and you put a period, comma, because remember, go back to that slide. This is how we format dates for I guess for a book, but books are only ever be published in a year. But this is for websites, journal articles. Anytime you have a publication date with the month, day, year, or day. In this case, use a day, month, year format. Then you have comma, and you have the website or the URL here. That's how you do it if you have something with a publication date. So what happens when you you don't have a publication date, you only have an access date. It's formatted just slightly different. So you have author name, work title, website, um, and then normally you would have the date would come next, the publication date, but since there's no publication date, you write the URL, then you put period, and then you put accessed with the access date. So the access date actually comes at the end if there's no publication date and only an access date. And so now, now I've covered writing a works cited entry for a book, for a journal article, a magazine article, and a website. So let's now talk about actual writing the works cited section. So the works cited section contains all the works cited in the in-text source citations. It contains all of them. And each entry contains all the necessary source information. Now we just went through formatting that, and you can see how it's containing the author's name and the publication year. Someone should be able to find that source with those works cited entries. And you format the works cited section in the following manner. 1, you alphabetize the works by the author's last name. When an author has more than one work listed, alphabetize the author's works by the work title. So if an author had three works in there, then how you would alphabetize those 3 works is you would alphabetize them by the work title. And use 3 hyphens in place of the author's name for all subsequent works by the same author. Meaning, if you had 3 works by Smith, then the first entry would say Smith. You would start with the name Smith, but the next entry by him, the name, you just put 3 hyphens. You don't repeat the name. You'll see this in the example on the next slide. You begin the first line of the entry at the left margin. Any run over, that means the second, third, fourth line, any additional line is indented a ½ inch. And you do not use a space between entries. So here's an example. You can see of an MLA formatted works cited. So you can see how there's authors here of Henley, Wick, and Zimmerman. You can see how they're in alphabetical order. And then the next thing is that, now these are all happen to be books, but and of course I use my name. So you have 4 books by Wick. So you don't repeat the name over and over again, which you do for Wick Kenneth. You just put these 3 hyphens here, and then you start the entry again. And then notice for each entry, it starts at the left margin, and each additional line, here this one only has 1 additional line. You indented a ½ inch. On this one, this first one has 3 lines, and notice how the second and third line are indented a ½ inch. So this is what a MLA formatted works cited page would look like. That's it for this video. If you want to get notifications for this series, please click subscribe. If you like the video, please click like, and check out links to books and videos in the description.